Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. The topic of today's lecture is necrobiotic granulomas. In this topic, I am going to cover those diseases or dermatoses which are histopathologically characterized by necrobiotic granulomas. What is a necrobiotic granuloma? A necrobiotic granuloma is a subclass of granulomas in which the main histological feature is necrobiosis. By necrobiosis, we mean to say that it is alteration in dermal connective tissue. It is not totally necrosed collagen, which we see in caseation necrosis, but it is just partially necrosed or altered collagen with blurring and loss of definition of collagen bundles. And often the area of necrobiosis show increased basophilia and if we do a mucin stain, it will give a stringy granular mucin and fibrins are present or negative. Then surrounding this necrobiotic area, there is a partial or complete ring of histiocytes and lymphocytes, and the histiocytes are usually epithelioid cells. Granulomas are usually not well defined, well formed as we see in tuberculosis. Granulomas are ill formed, but you can see a few multinucleated giant cell as well. So presence of epithelioid cells in the surrounding area with a few giant cells and a central altered collagen help in diagnosing a necrobiotic granuloma. So the first disease we are going to discuss among the necrobiotic granuloma is a very important disorder called as granuloma annulare. This is a disease of skin and subcutaneous tissue that is characterized by granulomatous annular plaques, nodules or papules that contain foci of altered collagen surrounded by histiocytes and lymphocytes. By this, it means that the granuloma annulare has a typical necrobiotic granulomatous histology. These lesions slowly enlarge before eventually fading out in months or years. So it is a self-limiting disorder, but the time taken for self-resolution is in months or years. The disorder is most common in children and young adults, but can occur at any age. Generalized granuloma annulare has a mean age of around 50 years. Granuloma annulare is approximately twice as common in women as compared to men. Etiology. It is a reaction pattern to a variety of triggering factors that include an insect bite, scabies, a cat bite, waxing that induced pseudofolliculitis, tuberculin test or BCG vaccination, hepatitis B vaccination, and chronic hepatitis B viral infection. It can occur as a reaction to anti-tetanus or diphtheria toxoid vaccination and as a reaction to various forms of trauma, such as occupational pressure on the fingers in a milkman. The disease is also triggered by various infections like human papilloma virus, varicella zoster virus, Epstein-Barr virus, HIV, parvovirus B19, hepatitis C virus, and Borrelia burgdorferi. Sun exposure is thought to provoke granuloma annulare, and the disseminated disease is seen in patients undergoing PUVA for some other dermatosis. It also occurs in red areas of tattoos. The relationship between granuloma annulare and diabetes mellitus is a little questionable, but there are several reports which point to a solid relationship between the two diseases. Associated disease. Type 1 diabetes is usually associated in patients who present with granuloma annulare at later ages. Then also associated with psoriasis and insulin resistance, autoimmune thyroiditis in women, in hyperlipidemias. However, there is no obvious relationship with malignancy. There is some reports of association with temporal arteritis and morphia, and many cases times granuloma annulare is seen associated with necrobiasis lipoidica and sarcoidosis. Clinical features. The typical lesion of granuloma annulare is an annular lesion that is seen on the dorsal surface of the hands. If we stretch the skin over the lesion, translucent beaded margin is appreciated. Granuloma annulare is of various clinical types. It can be a localized disease, it can be a generalized disease, there can be perforation. Granuloma annulare can be subcutaneous. It just presents as papules, or it is seen in a linear configuration. So localized granuloma annulare, the commonest form, and typically present as the ring of small, smooth, flesh-colored or erythematous papules. You can see, definitely there is no epidermal change in granuloma annulare, so you will not see any scaling or hyperkeratosis. These are just flesh-colored, indurated papules giving a ring-shaped appearance. The surface of skin over the papule is intact and there is no scaling. Annular lesions tend to enlarge centrifugally, may be solitary, or there can be multiple. Annular lesions tend to enlarge centrifugally before they become clear. So the site, it can occur anywhere on the skin, although the dorsal surface of hand and feet and fingers are the commonest site. Lesions are usually symptomless, although some may be tender to touch. Uncommon site of granuloma annulare include ear, pinna, penis, palms, periocular region, but mucous membranes are always spared. The generalized or disseminated granuloma annulare. Here, there are numerous skin-colored or erythematous papules, which may have an annular configuration and consist of myriad, symmetrically distributed, often coalescing lesions on trunk and limb. So there can be numerous lesions, usually present on trunk and limbs. These lesions will not be as solid and indurated as we see in localized granuloma annulare, since these are widely disseminated. But if we palpate the lesions, you will be able to appreciate the raised, annular, and sometimes beaded margins. The areas enclosed by annular papules is often violaceous in color. Pruritus may be a prominent symptom. This is not a symptom in case of localized GA. Perforating granuloma annulare. So perforation is common in granuloma annulare, and some of the papules develop yellowish center with discharge of a little clear or viscous fluid. So if you see some of the papules discharging and rest of the papules give a morphology of typical granuloma annulare, then you can say that few of the lesions have turned into a perforating dermatosis. Lesions can be localized or generalized. We are talking about the perforating GA, and generalized perforating granuloma annulare have been described in an infant. Then subcutaneous granuloma annulare. Subcutaneous GA is also uncommon. Lesions are nodular and occur predominantly on scalp and leg, particularly the pre-tibial region. So here it will come in the differential diagnosis of necrobiasis lipoidica, because the region is almost the same. Now, histopathology of granuloma annulare. There is a sharply delineated focus of necrobiasis with surrounding granulomatous inflammation. There is central core of degenerated or altered collagen surrounded by a dense rim of lymphocytes, palisading epithelioid cells, and fibroblasts. There is loss of elastic tissue within the granuloma. So if we do a elastic von Giesen stain, the elastic fibers will not be detected, and the basophilic material in the center is fibrin. If we go for Elsham blue stain that stains the mucin, then the necrobiotic area will stain for the mucin, giving a blue color. The diffuse granuloma annulare is different from the localized one in that the collagen degeneration is not organized as we see in localized GA, and bundles are arranged haphazardly. And note the circumferential lymphocytic infiltrate, which is not as dense as we see in localized. So it is difficult to pick the necrobiasis in disseminated or diffuse GA. Elsham blue will help sometimes in staining the mucin present within the necrobiotic foci. Perforating granuloma annulare will see some degree of perforation. Here you can see these altered collagen fibers which are trying to reach the epidermis. Subcutaneous granuloma annulare is characterized by a large lesion, multiple nodules, massive necrobiasis, abundant mucin, but all is seen deep within the subcutaneous fat. Here, intensely eosinophilic necrobiasis and surrounding fibrosis is seen in subcutaneous GA. Other reported variants of granuloma annulare include papillary, umbilicated, or follicular pustulous granuloma annulare. Then pustular generalized perforating granuloma annulare. So it is pustular as well as perforating and generalized. Then there is a type in which granuloma annulare is seen in a linear configuration, or patch granuloma annulare, in which just a patch or altered color is seen, and the beaded margin is very difficult to appreciate. The first differential diagnosis that comes in mind while seeing a patient of GA is cutaneous sarcoidosis. The tinea also comes in the differential, but the main difference is the tinea is an epidermal lesion, while granuloma annulare is a dermal lesion. Then annular lichen planus, usually the atrophic type, sometimes mimic with GA. In generalized granuloma annulare, you can confuse it with erythema annulare centrifugum and erythema migrans. Then sometimes localized GA is confused with erythema multiforme, but erythema multiforme usually is an epidermal lesion and is quite erythematous as compared to GA, which is skin colored. Then tuberculosis, tertiary syphilis, and papillonecrotic TB may also come in the differential diagnosis of localized or generalized granuloma annulare. Treatment. For localized granuloma annulare, it tends to remit spontaneously, so you can give just a symptomatic treatment. But if the patient wants treatment, then we can prescribe potent topical corticosteroids with or without occlusion. Intralesional steroids are also given, and they are quite effective. Then cryotherapy is also very effective. Local injection of low-dose interferon gamma can be given. Photodynamic therapy and pulse dye laser can be tried. And topical imiquimod, tacrolimus, and pimecrolimus can also be given. For disseminated granuloma annulare, we ought to give some systemic treatment as well. Topical tacrolimus and pimecrolimus is effective. Then pura-puva or narrowband UVB may be given. Itretinate or isotretinoin, cyclosporin, low-dose chlorambucil, nicotinamide, pentoxifylline, tranilast, clofazimine, topical vitamin E and a 5-lipoxygenase inhibitor, D-fibrotide, oral calcitrol, or some biologics like infliximab, adalimumab, etanercept can be prescribed. A few other modalities include dapsone, anti-malarials, fumaric acid esters, topical vitamin E, and combination, as I've already mentioned. Now, the second disorder in which the characteristic appearance is that of necrobiasis and necrobiotic granuloma is necrobiasis lipoidica. Previously, it was termed as necrobiasis lipoidica diabeticorum, but since the disorder is not peculiar to diabetes, it is now called as necrobiasis lipoidica only. The disease have a distinctive clinical appearance that is characterized by sharply demarcated plaques of atrophic yellow skin that may ulcerate. Etiology. The condition was originally regarded as a complication of diabetes. There is evidence of impaired microcirculation in individuals with necrobiasis lipoidica compared with control. This is a common finding in all the lesions of diabetes. An altered plasma protein profile, elevated factor VIII related antigen, and fibronectin may contribute to the vascular change. The possible role of antibody-mediated vasculitis is debatable. Pathogenesis. There is microangiopathy with thickening of vessel wall, decrease in oxygenation, and increase in carbon dioxide level that leads to necrobiasis lipoidica. In addition, platelet aggregation is also one of the etiological causes. The disease is most commonly and most widely associated with diabetes. However, it is also associated with hypo or hyperthyroidism, inflammatory bowel disease, vasculitis, and sarcoidosis. So the clinical features. Sclerodermatous, yellow-brown plaques are seen over the shins, and in most cases, the lesions are bilateral. So lesions are sclerodermoid. As the disease progresses, lesions show enlarge centrifugally and take an annular configuration with central atrophy and telangiectasias and active inflammatory edge. It begins as dull red papule or plaque which enlarge radially to become a yellowish atrophic plaque with erythematous edges. You can see a few crusted and necrotic areas, which could be the perforating lesions which we see in necrobiasis lipoidica. The surface is often glazed in appearance, and telangiectatic vessels, you can appreciate telangiectasias here, may be prominent. Lesions are usually symptomless, but if persist and untreated and diabetes or other associated conditions are uncontrolled, it may ulcerate. Usually develop in young diabetics and early middle age. In insulin-dependent diabetes, the age of onset is earlier, and female-male ratio is 3:1. Atypical facial necrobiasis lipoidica, female to male ratio 9:1. There is absence of diabetes and annular plaques on face and scalp. Now, this disorder is considered to be actinic granuloma. We will discuss it later. Histopathology. The histopathology of necrobiasis lipoidica is different from granuloma annulare in that in granuloma annulare, since the lesions are mostly papular, so the necrobiasis is seen in focal areas. While in necrobiasis lipoidica, extensive longitudinally disposed necrobiasis is seen in the dermis with lymphocytic and histocytic rim surrounding this area of necrobiasis like we see in granuloma annulare. So the difference is a diffuse and large area of necrobiasis. The surrounding infiltrate can be very dense and sometimes a follicular arrangement, and conspicuous number of plasma cells is seen, which is little diagnostic as compared to granuloma annuli. So perforation is common. You can see the perforating channel here, and the collagen is extruding from this area. Differential diagnosis. Lesions with marked fatty infiltration, particularly when not on the legs, may be mistaken for a xanthoma because the color is typically yellowish. So it can also be confused with necrobiotic xanthogranuloma, which is a rare destructive xanthogranuloma with red, orange, or yellowish indurated plaques. But the most commonly involved site is periorbital region and trunk, not the shins. Treatment. Potent topical corticosteroid, particularly if applied beneath an occlusive dressing, is helpful. You can also inject triamcinolone into the perilesional area, which limit the progress. Then topical tacrolimus may be given. Sometimes we ought to give oral steroids if the lesion is extensive. Second line treatment include PUVA and UVA1. And third line, there are multiple range of therapies, but all have an uncertain value. So these modalities include fumaric acid esters, thalidomide, chloroquine, photodynamic therapy, combination of split thickness autograft, etanercept, fibrinolytic agent, high dose nicotinamide, clofazimine, pentoxifylline, tretinoin topical, prostaglandin E1, aspirin or aspirin dipyridamole combination, pulse dye laser, improved telangiectasias and erythematous component, cyclosporin, mycophenolate, mofetil, and topically applied bovine collagen. Now we have come to the third part of this lecture, that is the cutaneous problems occurring in rheumatoid arthritis. So there are several cutaneous manifestations of rheumatoid arthritis that include the rheumatoid nodules, rheumatoid vasculitis, the Felty syndrome, pyoderma gangrenosum, interstitial granulomatous dermatitis with arthritis, palisading neutrophilic and granulomatous dermatitis, rheumatoid neutrophilic dermatitis, juvenile rheumatoid arthritis, and adult onset still disease. Among all these skin manifestation of rheumatoid arthritis, the rheumatoid nodules is the one that is associated with necrobiotic granulomas. So the rheumatoid nodules are palpable subcutaneous nodules occurring in approximately 20% of the patients with rheumatoid arthritis. Most common site is the ulnar border of forearm, less commonly seen on the dorsal surfaces of hands, knee, ears, and over the scapula. They can be up to several centimeters in diameter, firm in consistency, and tend to ulcerate with trauma. Subcutaneous nodules can erode to the underlying bone. A variant rheumatoid nodulosis, characterized by multiple small nodules that occur on hands and feet with palindromic rheumatism. Nodules are almost invariably associated with more severe forms of the disease, and here the rheumatoid factor and ANF is frequently positive. Sometimes they may precede rheumatoid arthritis by some years, and rheumatoid nodules rarely occur in sclera. Then it causes scleromalacia and cause perforation, scleromalacia perforans, that leads to complete blindness. Rheumatoid nodules is characterized by deep or subcutaneous involvement with multinodular and massive necrobiases and adjacent scarring. So remember a few features that are unique in rheumatoid nodules as compared to granuloma annuli. The first feature is its deep involvement. It involves the subcutaneous fat. The second is that the extent of necrobiasis is quite high, or the depth of necrobiasis, you can say, it is almost touching the caseation necrosis. So it is so intense. Then it is multinodular. There are multiple areas of necrobiasis adjacent, we can see. Then there is associated fibrosis. So the collagen bundles surrounding the necrobiotic areas are also thick, and giving it a fibrotic look. And then the surrounding granulomatous inflammation, which we see in granuloma annulare, it is not much different. So here, the area of necrobiosis with well-formed palisades of epithelioid cells and a few multinucleate giant cells is appreciated. Linear subcutaneous band and interstitial granulomatous dermatitis, the other features of rheumatoid arthritis. This is enlarged subcutaneous band, 3 to 5 mm wide and 10 centimeter or more in length. Histologically, the band shows similar changes to the rheumatoid nodules with interstitial granuloma formation, but no evidence of vasculitis. The bands are firm and non-tender and adherent to the skin. Palisading neutrophilic and granulomatous dermatitis. There is a conflict of being a separate entity. It has a vasculitic histology and more significant neutrophilic involvement. Certainly, the two clinical patterns can occur together. Now, the disease we are going to discuss is granuloma multiforme. Granuloma multiforme is a chronic granulomatous condition that is characterized by firm papules aggregated into plaques or forming the edge of the annular lesions. Either the papules coalesce to form a plaque or the papules coalesce to form an annular ring. The disease is seen in Africa, Indonesia, and India and occur predominantly in female of greater than 40 years of age. Etiology: the distribution predominantly on the exposed surfaces indicate that this disorder may be granuloma annulare on the light exposed areas. So this is important. Then it's suggested that primary event may be a sun-induced damage or a dermal connective tissue. Clinical feature: the skin-colored papules coalesce to form an annular lesion with raised borders, mainly seen on uncovered parts of the body. Pruritus is prominent, and condition lasts for many months or years or persist indefinitely. Histology: there are ill-defined necrobiotic areas. Palisading is also inconsistent. So the histology is not typical of necrobiotic granuloma, but at places you can appreciate necrobiosis. Multinucleated giant cells are seen, which can be a clue in the diagnosis. The most important differential diagnosis in granuloma multiforme is leprosy, because leprosy is also endemic in these areas where granuloma multiforme is seen. However, there is no loss of sensations or sweating or any other evidence of neural involvement. Plus, granuloma multiforme is seen on sun-exposed areas. However, the tuberculoid leprosy can occur anywhere. Furthermore, pruritus, which is a symptom of granuloma multiforme, is not a symptom of leprosy. And last but not the least, the histopathological appearance is in leprosy, tuberculoid leprosy, there will be perineural granulomas, while on contrary, in granuloma multiforme, you will find necrobiosis and giant cells, but no nerve involvement. None of the treatment is effective in granuloma multiforme, so the patient has to live with it till the disease resolves automatically, or sometime it persists for a very long period. Then the last disease we are going to discuss today is actinic granuloma, also called as the annular elastotic giant cell granulomas. There can be one or more skin-colored papules on a sun-damaged skin. So just remember that this is a chronic photodermatitis, so it will always occur on a sun-damaged skin. And it can enlarge to form annular lesions. Histopathology of granuloma, histopathology of actinic granuloma is that it is a reaction pattern seen in the reticular dermis. There is solar elastosis in upper reticular dermis, while deep reticular dermis shows necrobiosis and surrounding necrobiotic granulomas. There is absence of elastic tissue within the granulomatous infiltrate. Elastotic material is visible, shown by arrows within the cytoplasm of multinucleated giant cells. So they engulf these elastotic material. Association and variants. Actinic granuloma is associated with diabetes, prolonged doxycycline photosensitivity, prolonged sun bed exposure, and with onset and recurrence of acute myeloid leukemia. The less common variants of actinic granulomas include an annular form that present in temple and forehead, which was previously known as the atypical necrobiosis lipoidica. Then it is also seen in sun-protected skin and in burn scars. Clinical features. Lesions normally develop on sun-exposed skin, on the dorsal surface of hands and forearm, and V of the neck and bald scalp. Fair skin and freckled subjects are particularly susceptible. The lesions start insidiously as small pink papules which slowly extend centrifugally to form a ring of firm superficial dermal thickening. So here, this is the commonest form, and with one or more annular plaques with an elevated or enlarged, elevated erythematous margin. There is central area of atrophy that is devoid of elastic fibers. Management. There is no treatment of proven benefit. Topical steroids are generally unhelpful. Topical tacrolimus can be helpful. Intralesional triamcinolone can be given, and oral treatment including hydroxychloroquine, isotretinoin, acitretin, dapsone, methotrexate, and cyclosporin. With this lecture ends, and I thank you all for listening to this lecture and hope to see you next week with another topic. Goodbye and have a good day.